afternoon and welcome to Real Estate Live UK. For those of you who may just be joining us for your first session this week, or indeed your first session altogether, Real Estate Live takes place 3 times a year in February, June and October. This is obviously our October series of events, and it's a week-long programme of free-to-attend virtual panels brought to you by White Label, our partners and sponsors. So a big thank you to everyone that's made this week of events such a fantastic lineup, and we're looking forward to the panel in the next hour. During the 1-hour sessions, places across the UK are showcasing investment opportunities and talking about topical issues relating to property and placemaking. So if you're interested in those themes or from hearing from any other places as well, have a look on the website to see the other sessions that are taking place this week. The session that is about to begin is in partnership with Capital West London and WSP, and it'll be looking at the role of digital places in driving investment into West London. Before we begin the panel, I'd just like to remind the audience to please feel free to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. We'd like lots of great questions, especially because we've got such a fantastic panel and lineup for you this afternoon. So we'll be looking out for those, and they will be chaired by the chair of this conversation, Louise Jennings, who's a Director of Communications and Social Impact from U Capital. So without further ado, Louise, over to you, and I hope everyone enjoys the session.
Thanks, Bonnie, and thanks everyone for joining today. It goes without saying that with COVID, over the last 24 months, we've seen a fast-track digitalization. In the real estate world, this has influenced the way we plan, design, and engage with communities, as well as looking at the way that construction has adapted as well. In the context of this changing digital world, I'm delighted to introduce our fantastic panelists. So we have got Alex Silver, who is the Technical Director from WSP. We've got Finn Kelly, the Strategic Lead of Digital and Smart Cities from the West London Alliance, Jen Miller from Commonplace, and Judith O'Neill from the West London Institute of Technology. And they're going to chat to us today about the role of digital places in driving investment into West London. So without hesitation, I am going to introduce Alex and ask the question, so what opportunities can be harnessed by places that deliver strong digital infrastructure? Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Louise. It's a great question. It's a pleasure to be here. Digital places are my passion. I'm very keen to see the digital world rolled out into our built environment across the UK and globally. Digital infrastructure, what is it? Well, it's the glue that connects everything we use and need. It's the enabler of net zero. It's the layer that provides that resilience to all of our cities. But overall, it's what creates a better user experience for those who will work, live and visit. So think for 1 second about our recent world. We have the digital technologies many of you will be familiar with, whether that's fiber optic broadband, 4G, 5G mobile networks, intelligent traffic control systems, just to name 3 examples. These are all commonplace in today's world, and you may ask the question, so what? What's missing? Well, these infrastructures are what I would say were demand responsive. We have high bandwidth fiber optic because people need quicker access to the internet. That's never been more apparent than today's world we live in. 4G, 5G, well, it provides more capacity for more phones, more tablets, more applications, and so forth. Intelligent transport systems gets more capacity out of our existing infrastructure. All good things. However, they're ad hoc interventions that are problem solution driven. Now let's think about what the world will look like if we start to think about things differently. Everything has changed in the last 18 months. We're all abundantly aware of that. We're all keen to see how we can move forward from the current scenario. We all have been reminded of how important it is to think about our families, our friends, our loved ones, and the world has changed. The world has changed to a user-centric economy. Now, imagine a city, West London, if you will, where digital infrastructure is planned, designed, and operated with a specific user in mind. It changes the way you think about technology and digital infrastructure. It's about creating the use case, and you're instead thinking about who those users are, what their needs are, and then how will technology respond to improving that user experience. This is design thinking. It's what drives the tech world and also drives our cities of the new now. Imagine in a place, West London, where the government takes ownership of that digital policy. It defines what data can be used for and why. Think of digital within design codes, local planning policy, and the infrastructure guidance, a core component of our city. This creates an experience benchmark that not only sets that minimum parameter for what digital performance should be, but identifies the unique characteristics of the area to elevate some of the unique USPs that are associated with that particular area, West London in this case. Think about the private sector, developers responding to these benchmarks, adding their own USPs, creating smarter buildings, smarter places, focusing on accelerating net zero, resilience, and adding that layer of cognitive intelligence that keeps making things better. The private sector driving each other to perform and outperform each other, adding that interesting layer of competition. So when you think about your next move, you think about the infrastructure that you are interested in. Think of the benefits of a consistent, well-planned digital infrastructure focused on your user experience, and ask yourself, would you prefer a digitally connected West London with easier travel, more sustainable infrastructure, and better connectivity? And I think through leading on digital infrastructure, you may think twice about where you choose to go next. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. That was really useful and a thought-provoking start. I'm now going to hand over to Finn, and Finn, if I can, I'm going to ask, what are local authorities in West London doing to prepare for a digital transformation?
Thanks very much. So I'm Finn Kelly, Strategic Lead at West London Alliance for Digital. I think we've only got 3 minutes, so I'll try and be brief. I think for the council's perspective, digital has become a hugely important part of the work that councils are doing. I think it's also important to sort of remember that, councils and boroughs aren't sort of network providers. We don't have an fiber engineering function. We don't build mobile networks ourselves. So we're very much an enabler in this space. We come along and, provide assets, access to assets, staff, people, rather than actually going out and building networks. So that role, what does that actually mean? What does it mean in practice? And I mean, the work we're doing at the moment is very much focused on getting the sort of nuts and bolts, the very sort of day-to-day, business right with the sector, so that we are attractive for investment. And I think it is a competitive environment for investment into the digital infrastructure supporting the city. It's a very active market, lots of players, lots of interest. So getting our kind of day-to-day business model as a council, as a group of councils right, is really important. In terms of what our sort of priorities are for, why do we, what's driving us? I mean, it's interesting, the shift in the pandemic towards home working, and there's a very different sort of demand pattern on the network that's emerging. And we haven't snapped back to going into the office. I mean, I'm not in the office at the moment, and and we're not seeing an immediate jump back to where we were. So there is a different demand pattern on the network, and we're really keen as boroughs to make sure that we are supporting the network across the whole sub-region, so that everybody's got the connectivity to access public services, but also get employment opportunities through the internet. And obviously you need really good fibre to do that, and really good connectivity, or through a mobile connection perhaps as well. And then, we're also obviously very, very motivated around digital exclusion, and making sure that where we're investing our money and resources into supporting the market, that we're also making sure that we are future-proofing and we are getting connectivity out to residents that really need it, and also businesses that really need it to, access the cloud, access marketplaces online. So, I mean, I'll stop there, but I think, it gives a bit of an idea of where sort of we're coming from and what the type of work is that we've got underway in this space. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you, Finn. And now I'll go on to Judith. And Judith, if I could ask, what skills are now being developed to support digital change in West London?
Okay, thank you. And also present on the panel is my colleague Maruf Tungakar, who's our head of School of Engineering at the college and part of West London IoT. Most people probably be familiar with further education colleges. HCUC is Further Education College in West London. but we have a large engineering and digital base and tradition. West London IoT is a new development linked to the college in partnership with Brunel University and other anchor partners, including Heathrow Airport and Fujitsu. And the Institutes of Technology are something that the government has brought in recent years. There are only 12 in the country, so we're really proud to be one here over in West London. And the idea is to really push forward on the development of digital skills, particularly at level 3, 4 and 5, also continuing with sort of degree level at level 6. It's the sort of level 3, 4 and 5 and some of the technician and higher technician level is where there's considered to be a national shortage. And so that's what the IoTs are about. And so obviously with COVID and Brexit, these are really impacted on roles across the labour market with a specific focus on digital and data-driven areas, including automation and green opportunities. And to ensure that our curriculum supports industry, prepares learners for the future, the Institute of Technology is working closely with local employers, including those anchor partners that I've just mentioned, to understand the skills requirement within our STEM section in West London. These employers, along with other college partners, we work very closely with our curriculum teams to co-design courses, including on unit selection, which units we select to deliver, and providing information for assessments. And it's intended, as employers perhaps come more to the fore in the future, that they will also include some co-delivery with employers. So we're really trying to make sure that what we deliver really meets what employers are needing. And as the economy becomes more digitalised, our higher technical qualifications are really sort of looking towards sort of meeting those needs through our deliveries of HNCs, HNDs, the higher apprenticeships, and they involve real-life project work, as well as providing learners with the softer skills, sort of in your design thinking, problem solving, communications, because the digitalisation can't sort of exist in isolation. So the IoT offers progression rates from the new T levels, which we've also been delivering through to our HNCs and the HNCs and HNDs. And there's also the opportunity, we're increasing links with Brunel around top-up degrees. And Maruf, my colleague, has been working very closely with Brunel on the development of sort of top-up to an electronic degree, and that will become an electrical and electronic degree top-up, so that students can see their route right the way through to level 6 if they want to. But there's a variety of units that learners, in the subject areas that learners can pick on. So learners in electrical and electronic, mechanical and general engineering programs, they'll use mathematic modelling and software simulation to test circuits and designs and so on. And a few examples include fluid simulation and systems testing. Within the digital curriculum, learners develop key digital skills through multiple units, including Visual Basic.NET, Packet Tracer, and the database and design and development unit also involves Access and SQLs in terms of developing databases. And similarly, we also have, as well as the kind of the data science and data technician type routes, we also have games programming units and courses for people who are wanting to go into that side of industry within the games design industry. So we've got a huge variety of areas here within in the IoT to help promote the development of digital skills within the area. I'll stop there because I've started to cough.
Thanks, Judith. That was really interesting. Brilliant, thank you. Jen, so over to you now. And if I could ask, how are companies in West London adapting to harness digital and the benefits it can deliver?
Thank you, Louise. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Miller. I work at Commonplace, and we're an end-to-end digital engagement solution for the built environment. And I think when you start to think about sort of getting people involved in digital and also getting the community to be sort of central to the way that organizations think about how they build or how they adapt or how they change an area. Digital provides a really unique opportunity to bridge both the offline and the online into a conversation that is visible, that increases trust and transparency in processes, but also leads to ongoing conversations. And I think that's where, actually using technology, you can, start to lead people into that. So instead of thinking of it as, you need everyone to use digital, you start to use blended approaches where you lead people to a digital solution. So people now are very familiar with using QR codes. So is that something that is being used to make it easier for people to give feedback? The other part of that is, and oftentimes we kind of want to force people into a digital environment, whereas actually if we think about where are people, where are the people we want to talk to? If West London, maybe they're coming in from Heathrow Airport. And so how are we pulling those people into a conversation when they go into the Senti Center and they want to be able to leave feedback? It could be at the bus stop, and it might be talking about issues of safety or cleanliness or a number of different things. And so it's about sort of thinking about where are the people that you want to talk to, and then how do you bring them into digital in a sort of easy way. And then I think the next step of that is actually how do you build that into a relationship or a conversation so that it isn't something where, you do a survey and it's done. You do a survey, you build, you ask for additional feedback, you ask for priorities, and you make it a very inclusive and a co-creation process. You're on mute, Louise. Thank you.
This always happens, doesn't it? There's always one person that has to do it. So thank you for that, Jen. It was really interesting. Just to say now that we'll head to questions. So if anybody does have any questions for any of the panelists, if you could put them in the question and answer session that you can, in the question and answer box that you can just click on at the bottom. I think we've got one or two, and there's definitely one that I'd like to ask, and I might hand over to Alex to start with, just to give us an answer to this. But the sustainability agenda is really, really big at the moment, and that's something that West London wants to be at the forefront of. And it would be great to get your opinion on on how the digital transformation can help drive the sustainability agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. It's a really good question. So part of WSP's offer with digital places is that it's our fundamental belief that the route to net zero fundamentally requires that digital layer in order to drive the economies of scale. So really, without digital, net zero is going to be a far harder journey to take. And it's quite interesting, if you look at what net zero is, really it's decarbonizing our world. And actually, the digital technologies are what connect our infrastructures. So at the very basic level, if you start to think of an energy system and that need to turn that energy system into something that's net zero, the digital strategy allows you to give the framework for whether it's a solar panel, 2 solar panels, how you connect those together, what's the benefit of doing so, what's the user experience of doing that, is there a feedback loop? And I think Jen touched upon that feedback a minute ago in her answer. Fundamental that user feedback feeds back into the system, but also you then integrate that software layer that brings forward the efficiencies and the AI, which allows that system to operate better and continue to improve over time. So I guess that's one example of how digital will help enable the net zero agenda or the wider sustainability agenda.
Thank you, Alex. That's really interesting. And we've had some further questions now on the Q&A. So if I could just ask, and perhaps Jen and Finn, I might go to you both on this, but how do you ensure that the older generation who is unable to use digital tech is not excluded from this new world order? And why do we need to force people to read menus on our phones? Jen, maybe if I go to you first.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point because it's true. And in some ways, even though I love technology and have worked in technology for a long time, I hate certain parts of it a lot and don't engage with it very well. So I think we probably all identify with this. I think one bit is in the way that we design the experience. So I think, you still can get a paper menu if you ask for it. And so in the same way that if you, for example, are trying to get survey feedback and you know that the area that you're in has an older population, then you can either do the surveys in the way that you've done them, but design them the same as the digital survey so that you have consistency in the data. The other is, if you use people that are going door to door, use it on a tablet and allow them to fill it in on a tablet where it's a bit of a bigger screen. Or I think some of it is training. So why are certain parts of the older generation uncomfortable with phones and menus on phones? And what is that in sort of the way the menu is structured on the phone could be a big part of that. And also the way that they were taught to use it. And so I think there's two sides to this where it's one, the people who are trying to move people into digital, are they thinking about the sort of the end-to-end process? So there's going to be blended approach offline and online. How do you use it to get people into that particular area? So if you already know that people are going to your website to pay their bill, why not then make that the place where they can also give feedback or engage with a survey? And so it's, I think, a sort of, most people are using digital somewhere. How do you use that place? Again, where are people to bring them into a different type of conversation that maybe is of interest to them?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Finn, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I think just to say that I think this issue has gone from being something, a sort of key part of a lot of digital strategies in councils pre-COVID to something that is like really, really high up the agenda now and is critical. So I think the kind of addressing the whole digital exclusion, ensuring people can access digital technology, is something that a lot of the public services are focused on, from justice through to education, so any sort of interactions with government. I mean, the idea that some people can't do that because it's only going through a digital channel. I mean, that's something that, needs, careful thinking through in all service design work. And, it's probably just worth mentioning actually that we have got in London, the London Office for Technology Innovation. And so they're doing a lot of work across London, looking at the sort of big challenges in digital exclusion and inclusion, and looking at how to ensure that any new service that is designed that moves online, certainly from the public sector's perspective, is designed in a way that it's accessible for people.
Absolutely, thank you. And actually, I might just open it to Judith and Maroof as well, just obviously from an educational point of view as well, and how that sort of has an effect in this new world where we're all learning to be more digital.
Maroof, would you like to answer that? The older learners, the younger learners? I think you're on mute, Maroof.
It makes me feel that it wasn't just me.
Yeah, I clicked the button, but sorry. So we teach digital in almost every single unit. So digital at the forefront, and even we use technology in teaching as well. Like in the lockdown, we taught the lessons using, let's say, Google Classroom, or some of the colleagues use Zoom. Now we use Microsoft Teams where possible. But in every unit, we do simulation, practical, and so on, almost. So it's all digital. The learners do write the softwares. Energy is at the forefront. So whatever we teach, we talk about sustainability. So the projects the students design, even mini projects, they think about sustainability. And we invite the employers actually. So employers do judge the projects. So lots of things happening, and digital is at the forefront, whether it's engineering curriculum, which is electrical engineering, electronics, mechanical, or computing, or even construction engineering. So digital is part of it actually we teach.
I think from the college point of view, in terms of people who are really looking for some of the basic provisions, it might be, say, within, for example, our ESOL curriculum, they will teach, as well as teaching English as a second language, they will also teach sort of increasing sort of digital skills as sort of employability skills. What we don't have at the college, but you might find it in an adult education provider, is real kind of, introduction to Excel, introduction to IT. Those are all woven into our courses, which may be more directed at 16 to 18s. But yes, I think it's really still, those sort of basic things out there. But also, if anyone's starting a course, we would make sure that we'd have an understanding of their, the basic levels of their digital awareness and skills. But most young people coming out of school, have got at least some of those sort of basic, more basic things. But in the curriculum we're teaching, certainly within the IoT, we're focused on the sort of the higher level skills in particular.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Judith. Maruf mentioned sustainability again there, and I think I'm just going to loop back to that because we've had a couple of other questions coming through on sustainability in particular. I think there's one question. I think I'm going to put two questions together here. So we've got a question that says, how do we ensure that the switch to digital is done sustainably? Are there enough incentives in place for organisations to ensure that they power new digital infrastructure with renewable energy? And I think that's linked to another question, which says, digital also means storage, which needs a lot of energy. How is that calculated into the future net zero calculation? So Alex, I'm going to hand over to you to start this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great, Louise. I did see both of those questions pop up. They're really good questions because people often forget about the data centers, for example, where a lot of this processing is undertaken. People think that because there's some solar panels on the roof or some sustainable water saving technology in your property or in a building, but actually you've ticked that net zero box. But actually the problem, if you like, is moved somewhere else. I think there's two parts to that question. So in terms of how you manage the data center problem, there's two parts to that. One is technology is moving in such a way that less processing needs to be done in the data centers. So edge computing and in-device computing is moving forward at a rate that there's less reliance on having to do stuff in the cloud. It can be done within the device now. So that lowers the demand going forward in terms of the intensity of the data center. But at the data center level itself, you need to take that responsibility one step further. So some of the projects I'm involved in at the moment is looking at that data center level infrastructure and how you can start to offset some of the huge energy requirements of those types of facilities. And of course, even data centers have their corporate responsibility. They also need to demonstrate a route to net zero and decarbonize. So those solar panel technologies I'm talking about, other renewable energy technologies, they can also be built into the data center, and they should be built into the data center. So we're seeing a combination of physical intervention at the design level, but also technology progress at the device level that needs to use less power in the data centers themselves.
Thanks, Alex. That's really interesting and hopefully answered the question. Does anybody else want to just come in at this point, or are you happy for?
I just a quick point actually, Louise, just on that. So I think there's also something to think about is about sort of new companies and startups, digital startups, and how they can build into their sort of business models and plans these net zero, thinking about net zero. And I suppose if you look at what happened with, things like blockchain, where there's been this huge negative environmental impact, that's based around the way the software design, the way the software is designed. So I think there's something around thinking about how we can work with small digital companies designing new technologies to make, to help them make more of a socially, environmentally responsible product. It's just another point. I mean, it's outside the scope of a council, but it's definitely something that I think is an important part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic. And we've had some slightly broader questions now, so we'll open it up to be a bit more West London again. So I think perhaps I can ask if there are any developers in West London that the panel thinks are at the forefront of digital transformation. Maybe Jen, if I could hand to you to talk through that.
Yeah, I think there are just generally a number of developers in West London. I'm not sure if I should be using customers' names, but I I think that when you start to think about the sustainability side or ESG or social value, that many developers are bringing that into sort of their core way of approaching building and designing. And I think that they're also being more proactive in engaging communities and not just thinking about sort of getting, planning permissions through, but actually wanting to understand the place and how to really bring people into placemaking. So is it, the name of a building is named after a person who lived there versus just some generic name. And so it's just thinking about the little things that they can do to build sort of the narrative of an area across a number of different topics or use cases. And I think the sustainability story is really interesting because I think that just on that point, I think there's a massive push to do it and get people to engage with it. But I think there's also still just some general education for the community on what that looks like for them. And so I think there's always a sort of give and take of, what people understand what's, possible with digital and also possible with sustainability, and then using that to bring them into different types of conversations. So kind of 2 points there, sorry.
No, that's good and well worth doing. Alex, I don't know if in your work you've noticed anybody, particularly in the way that innovative design of buildings, or again, maybe not speaking about a developer generically, but if you can talk generically, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing is pretty much all of the major developers are now starting to realize the benefits and potential of digital, both at the building level, but also at the place level. I think developers are realizing that digital layer is what creates that user experience. So that working theory is somewhere that's digitally connected is likely to be more investable than somewhere that's not digitally connected. And we're starting to see that across parts of central and West London already, where certain buildings and places have perhaps a more sustainable spec and also a better degree of digital connectivity, are attracting some of those blue chip clients and the big investors because they want to be part of that digital revolution. Also, you get the tech startups, the incubators. So some of these particular businesses are really interested in being located in such buildings for obvious reasons. So what we're starting to see is that developers are seeing digital as the USP, and it's increasing the value of their floor space and their assets. So it's a really, really powerful and a very investable technology.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. That's a really interesting point there as well. There are lots of questions coming through, but I'm going to just jump onto one that's just come through. And Judith, I'm going to direct this one towards you. So, a question: the physical environment is built with a bias towards men because historically engineers, architects, etc., were and still are men. The number of women in tech is also low. So, with that in mind, how do we ensure that the digital environment is built inclusively so we avoid a similar bias? I mean, Judith, is there anything that you're doing in particular to encourage?
Yes, well, I mean, obviously, there's so many, the work, the digital environment, the work environment, sort of physical spaces. It's a big, obviously, a big topic area. And for the West London one of IoT, one of the sort of key targets is around increasing the numbers of young women and women in STEM sort of subjects and obviously therefore into STEM careers. We are very, very fortunate to have some very, very good STEM colleagues here at the college who are women. And one of the things that we've done last academic year is I tried to bring this group of women together. We had 2 or 3 meetings. One of the things we've done is actually just sort of letting those women tell their story of how they came into working in those sort of professions that weren't traditional. We had all sorts of different stories. We have a couple of sort of video blogs on the IoT website that's telling a couple of those stories. And in doing that, we're hoping that young women, women looking to return perhaps after having children will see that and see themselves within those stories, because I think that's really important. Maroof, as a head of school, has actively developed, sort of speaking for him now, a number of female engineering lecturers. And one of the things that we know is that for these subject areas, it's not necessarily a genetic thing that men do this, women don't do this, because we've recruited a lot of our female engineering staff and digital staff who came to work in this country from other countries, where STEM, science, engineering, maths isn't an unusual thing for women to be doing. And we're also trying to use that as part of the narrative that we're trying to build up about encouraging girls and young women to come into the STEM subjects, and see engineering, digital careers as something. Engineering isn't a sort of, it's not a dirty profession anymore. Construction, you've got all the use of AR, VR, same with games technology, and it's something we're really, really trying to work on and push forward. But it is a really difficult, it's a difficult nut to crack. There's no doubt about it. But I think the more other women see women represented and see themselves, it's about seeing yourself within lecturing, working in those careers. That women will think, actually, no, that's something that I can have a go at. And we've had a student within our HNC computing recently who was doing a childcare course and then decided to change tack and then just finished an HND in computing, has gone on to university because she saw that that's where the career option was for her. But it's about making people feel welcome in all of the spaces.
Thank you, Judith. Really interesting. And just again, opening that one up in case anybody else wants to just jump in.
Yeah, it's. I can just quickly say something on that, and it's great to hear what Judith was just saying. I think it's right. There's two things to this, and that is one, making sure that when you approach a tech solution, you do take on board what that user is and understand the users. And I think there was a question in the chat around social inclusivity, which Finn's already touched upon. You need to go through that design thinking process to understand your user and understand what it is your user wants and what they want to get out of the system. So you need to go through that iterative process to make sure, as much as possible, you design out any potential issues or barriers to certain people being able to interact with the system. Because if you exclude someone who's a core user, then the system's failed. And of course, you need to keep iterating on that solution. And the other thing, I do agree, having a diverse team is really, really important. So in my team, in my digital places team, I'm the only man, which is great, I think. But also what that encourages is different ways of thinking, different cultures and different backgrounds, because everyone has a different solution and a different way of thinking. And by bringing together all those different points of views, I think gives something that's really special. And you're right, if you have a product that's designed by a certain social group, background, race, whatever, then you may run the risk of skewing what that solution looks like. So brilliant question.
Thanks. And Jen, I saw you. Did you want to just say, yeah?
Yeah, and I think it actually goes to a point someone anonymous said around testing systems with real people across different age groups and communities, because I think that is really where the answer lies, is it's testing and looking at trends based on the data, and then trying to tweak and change for those different populations and groups. And I think that is the most important thing, because it kind of strips gender out of the equation or strips other demographic information out of the equation and makes it very much on who that person is and what they need. And how do you make that as easy as possible for them?
Yeah, really good point. And thank you for going back to that question as well. That's another interesting point there too. Okay, so I think now we have a question on security, which is also something that a lot of people a sort of common question when we talk about digitalisation now. So the question is, moving towards digitalisation, hence more personal and work information is shared online. How can security keep up with those changes, and how can we implement those? Maybe Maruf and Judith, if I go to you first, is this something that you're looking on at the Institute of Technology, and how security and digitalisation sort of go hand in hand?
I mean, I can start, then I'll hand over to Maruf. I mean, just in terms of just the overview, we recognise this as a sort of growing area, and we've got certainly got cybersecurity, a level 3 being offered within our courses, and also linked to our HNs. We see it, it's obviously as a growth area. And so we know we've got specific curriculum groups targeted at those areas and helping sort of companies sort of find their solutions. But I'm sure there's other elements of security built across other units and things. I don't know if Maruf, is there anything you can add to that more specifically?
I mean, we do teach security, especially in the computing programs and electrical electronics, because there are some specific units dealing with security, the levels of security to keep it safe for everyone, to keep the work secure as well. So there are technologies we teach across a range of programs in security, especially in the computing sector, because mainly the software engineers do take care of that, but also electrical electronic engineering as well. The whole OSI layer and link with the data communication and telecommunications also. And mainly the software issues.
Thank you, Maruf. And Finn, is there, I mean, from a council perspective, obviously councils have for a long time handled sort of sensitive data and things like that. Is there anything from a local authority perspective that you think is particularly interesting?
Well, I suppose I was looking at the questions, and there is potentially linking that back to this one that came through earlier about do we need to make West London become more digital more quickly, or is there a risk if we don't become digital quickly enough? And I think, what a lot of the promise of sort of new networks is that they are going to be more secure. So from the infrastructure side, having modern networks gives us more resilience. The future mobile networks are intended to be much more secure for, managing lots of different applications through them, actually. So I think there's definitely a link there around, the more that we can upgrade and improve the digital infrastructure, the more secure our infrastructure system is, and more resilient it will be. I mean, in terms of sort of data, councils, it's their core business, handling personal data. They're very good at it. There's lots of very, complex processes around that, which, to provide that level of security that we need, a lot in similar with many other large organisations. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to comment more than that, really. But I think it's fair to say that, we have, for any data that's held, it's all super secure procedures, etc. So the other thing just might be to sort of think about is as the sort of internet is evolving, there are new sort of data infrastructures appearing which are even more secure. So there is sort of new level. There are new opportunities. I think, as technology is developing to build even more secure systems, than we have currently. I'll stop there.
No, that's great, and thank you for picking up on the question about West London. I'm actually going to open that one now a bit more widely. So, just as a recap, the question is: do the panel think that West London is moving towards being a digital place quickly enough? Is there more to be done? And what would be the risk if the region didn't become digital quickly enough? So, I think that's a really important question, and I might go to each of you on this one. So, Alex, if I could start with you, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I guess there's a couple of parts to that question, and I'm going to link it back to what Finn was just saying, if that's okay. I think from a government or local authority perspective, and security is fundamental, and it's great that there's an acknowledgement that from everyone really that technology is becoming more and more secure and will continue to evolve in a way that it does so. The other element of that is security can be managed through privacy. And through privacy, you should be able to have the choice to be able to opt in or opt out of what data is used. So one of the groundbreaking moves that's really happened in the last year from a wider London perspective is the draft technology charter, which some people might be aware of. And part of the element of that is a request. It's not a legal requirement at the moment, but to undertake something that is called DPIA, or data protection impact assessments, as part of any particular technology intervention. Now, this is a really, really important step forward, because what this means, it puts the onus on the investor, on the developer, whoever it is that's implementing data infrastructure within the public or private realm, to detail exactly what type of data they need, why they need it, and how they're going to secure it. So this is a step change away from perhaps the somewhat Wild West of the world has been, to taking ownership and responsibility for the data that is used. So from a West London perspective, they very much have the ability at a borough level to be able to consider how DPIAs can be rolled out across the borough, how the local planning process can be updated to a point that local planning codes, design codes, and so forth have a level of digital responsibility. And the private sector can respond by showing the technologies that they're going to implement at their building, at their infrastructure level, and why they are asking for that level of data. Because really, data should only be extracted from people in a way that is beneficial to them as a user. And if that data is going to be used for something else, monetized, for example, advertisements, whatever it is, that should be done with the explicit consent of the user. So the opportunity here is for West London to be a leader in terms of its digital planning policy.
Thanks, Alex. That's great. And Jen, if I could ask you the same question. So do you think West London is moving towards being a digital place quickly enough?
I really liked Alex's points, to be honest, around sort of the data security and the privacy and having explicit consent and sort of a preference management side to how people engage with digital. And I think that, like, going to sort of my earlier point around blended, so everyone thinks of preferences. I don't, if you're familiar with the concept of preference management or email opt-in or consent, but it's typically done digital. But I think that it could also be spread a bit wider in that, why don't you just ask people how they want things, and it could still be post, and naturally we don't want that because of, environmental concerns and everything else. But in some ways it depends on what you're trying to achieve and what is the more important thing. Is it more important for that person to know that, or is it more important to get them into a digital environment? And so I think that, when you think about West London moving towards digital, I think one is sort of knowing the people in West London and knowing what they want and need, asking them what they want and need, and then making sure things are done in the right way, so that there isn't really any risk, and you can start to look at trends over time and how people feel over time as well, which I think is really interesting for an area to be able to know. So maybe something that's quite controversial or active travel, maybe we know right now that people are quite mad about it, but maybe in another couple of years, people will be very pleased. And so being able to have that, I think, is really interesting, but also will help tell that digital story. So how do people feel about digital now? And then, how will they feel about it over the next few years as things change and transform?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Jen. And Judith and Ruth, if you could sort of, again, from an institute perspective.
Yeah, I think there are sort of two, you could think about people living in West London, working in West London. I'm sure they've got sort of one view around digitalisation, but obviously very specifically with companies and businesses and what their digital requirements are, which are just so different. Obviously, the requirements of an engineering company are going to be different to a company, a sort of retail outlet. They're going to have sort of different digital requirements. And I think the important thing is listening to those companies, listening to those businesses around what they need, because they will need to be keeping up with trends, making things work perhaps more efficiently, more sustainably. But I think one of the real challenges for West London, and I think it's an international challenge actually, is around recruiting the staff who can provide the the expertise around digital, whether or not it's, your security around your systems, or moving from, a sort of, into a different platform for having meetings. We've recently made the change from using largely Google Classroom into Microsoft Teams for teaching. That's been a big shift for us for particular reasons, and continually having the staff underneath that. And obviously, what we're very much looking to do in the IoT is to make sure that, the companies in West London have got the staff that they need, from the sort of local talent pool, to be able to, help companies, or it could be the local council working with their residents, meet those, those digital solutions, really. And we all need to work together, because there's no point in a provider like us putting on courses that nobody wants, and making sure we're up to date and we're sort of really working together to meet the needs of businesses and local people. Ruth, you would know more about the pace in West London and the digitalisation than I do.
Yeah, I think to add to that, yes, I think we want to move forward, and it's difficult unless we have the data exactly how fast we are moving as compared to other regions, the West London. But I think we've got the goal. If you hear from the employers and so on, there is a requirement throughout the world to move towards at a much faster pace. Obviously, train the workforce, be ready, create technologies, recruit good teachers also who have the subject knowledge, and also the students are generally, what I have seen in teaching career, they are generally keen to learn the new things. But so our direction of travel is also going towards innovative technologies in every sector, like including security, for example, or manufacturing, for example, Industry 4.0, automation and robotics. So we do teach, and the learners are willing to learn step by step and try to understand the technology. And we work with the employers, including in apprenticeships, to train the specific workforce to meet the requirements. But I think the data maybe with the council, I don't know how fast or slow we are moving. That's difficult to answer in terms of the number of people using the phones and so on. But generally, I think the data, I attended a presentation last week, and the person had statistics that vast majority of the population in UK and in the world may be using digital. Some may not have devices still, but they have some sort of device, either a computer or tablet or a phone. But I don't know the comparison in terms of other regions.
That's okay. Well, in which case, I might just hand over to Finn. I'm conscious of time, just to sort of have a final word on West London.
Yeah, well, I suppose just to say on this point around how fast is West London going digitalised, in terms of digitalisation. So there is a lot of work that's gone on with the private sector and the councils to get the quite sort of mundane topic of way leaves agreed across the boroughs. So what that means is that fibre companies are investing at scale into West London now. So the whole fibre network is really being growing rapidly and going to places where it hasn't gone before. And then in terms of the sort of mobile system, there's a lot of work going on as well with the boroughs and my team actually to look at how we can enable and accelerate future networks in mobile across all 7 boroughs. And the work we're doing is, probably, in terms of across London, I think we're sort of definitely at the forefront of that type of work, because, it's a really clear business case that, the more, if we improve connectivity, small and large businesses all benefit, residents do benefit as well, and the whole sort of, the link to sort of the cloud and everything else is critical for all businesses, large and small. So, that case has been made, and I think, there is a lot. I think West London is now moving forward at quite a pace with the whole, in terms of digital connectivity. There is a lot of market interest.
Fantastic. Thank you, Finn. It's a very fantastic conversation, and I've seen a couple of questions that have gone through that we haven't answered, but perhaps we'll find a way to get back to people after the panel discussion. But just to sum up, I think, really interesting conversation. We heard from Alex, who started with a very provoking 3 minutes, talking about how historically there's been ad hoc interventions with problems that are problem solution driven, but actually, and again, this has been a theme, I think, of the whole conversation, how can we design our systems with a specific user in mind? We heard from Finn, who talked about councils as enablers, that I thought was a really interesting point, and then spoke to us a little bit about what that means, and also how that's changed over the last few months and years with COVID and the different demand patterns on the network. Then we had from Judith, who talked a little bit about the West London Institute of Technology, and also something that I thought was quite interesting there about how the Institute is working with local employers and how they're co-designing courses with the private sector as well to make sure that the digital skills that they're teaching today are practical for their students in the future too. And then Jen, we heard from, she talked about using a blended approach to lead people into a digital solution. So it isn't about thrusting digitalization upon people, but really coaching them and into the sort of the new world that we're in. And then I thought the conversation or the Q&A that we had at the end was particularly interesting, with a little bit more of a focus on sustainability, on digital inclusion, and importantly for the context of this conversation on West London. So really fantastic conversation, and thanks everybody for your contributions. And I'm going to hand over to Bonnie now, who has a couple of words to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Louise, and thank you so much to our panel. It was a really wide-ranging and really detailed discussion, so hopefully the audience appreciated that and got some answers to some of the questions that they were putting in. We had a lot of questions on the panel, so that was fantastic. Thank you for your contributions too. So tied to some of the net zero points raised in the panel, I also just wanted to flag that I'm pleased to let you know that Capital West London recently held a roundtable on net zero action, which has actually just been launched today. And the link to that we're going to share in the chat for everyone to have a look if they're interested in reading some more about West London's net zero plans and some of the transitions that are being made, which obviously tie into this discussion, but then also range more broadly across investments and developments across the sub-region. So something for you to take away and have a look at after the event. So looking ahead, audience, just a couple of notes for you, and indeed panel, if you were interested in coming along too. We would be delighted to see you tuning in to some of our other sessions tomorrow and Friday. The sessions that are coming up tomorrow are on the screen now. We've got a session about culture and community, our culture and community keynote, first thing tomorrow morning, which will be looking at whether those two things can together revive the high street. We've got some fantastic speakers taking part in that, so hopefully you can tune in for that. Then you can see the other sessions taking place. We've got a panel about industrial and logistics, which obviously again ties into some of the digital points being raised in this panel. Then a panel moving over to something completely different about Belfast. And then finally a session on the role of music in supporting regeneration and community engagement. So a few different sessions, and hopefully we can see for some of those. But yes, thank you again to the panel. We look forward to seeing you again either later today or later in the week, and really appreciate Capital West London and WSP bringing this panel to Real Estate Live. So see you all soon. Thank you.